In the early months of 2024, the world's focus shifted sharply towards the Middle East. As tensions between Israel and Iran reached a fever pitch, the headlines began to circulate. Reports of Israeli strikes against Iranian military targets, promises of retaliation rippling out of Tehran, and diplomatic efforts collapsing almost as soon as they began. Against this backdrop, news broke that the United States had redeployed several of its warships to the eastern Mediterranean and Red Sea. The unspoken question reverberated across the globe: is a regional war, perhaps even nuclear war, looming on the horizon? To understand how we arrived at this moment, it's important to look beyond the daily front page and understand the deeper dynamics at play. The hostility between Israel and Iran is rooted decades deep. For the Israeli government, Iran has always represented an existential threat, a regional power with growing military capabilities, an expanding network of proxy militias, and, most importantly, a nuclear program bristling with ambiguity and suspicion. Iran, for its part, sees Israel as a Western-backed outpost, standing in the way of its own aspirations for leadership in the Muslim world. Skirmishes have simmered at the edges for years, from covert operations on Iranian soil to shadow wars in Syria, but the past year saw these covert conflicts edge ever closer to direct confrontation. The spark in 2024 came from a series of missile barrages launched from Iranian proxies in Lebanon and Syria, targeting Israeli military infrastructure in the Golan Heights. Israel responded swiftly, launching dozens of airstrikes against positions it claimed were controlled by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. In Tehran, the government promised that any further escalation would be met with unprecedented consequences. The world, already on edge from economic instability and the aftershocks of other regional disputes, collectively braced itself. As tensions escalated, the United States faced a complicated set of choices. The U.S. has long been Israel's primary ally, promising support in the face of existential threats. But it also sought to avoid being drawn into direct military conflict with Iran, a regional superpower with deep connections to Russia and China. Nevertheless, with civilian casualties rising in both Israel and Lebanon, and Tehran's rhetoric intensifying, the Pentagon made its move. Warships from the U.S. Navy's Sixth Fleet were deployed to positions close enough to act, but not so close as to provoke direct confrontation, at least not yet. The rationale here was twofold. First, to demonstrate willingness and capability. American warships, equipped with advanced missile defense systems, send a clear message not just to Iran, but to Russia, China, and every other actor in the region. Second, to provide a technological shield, intercepting potential missile attacks on Israeli territory and offering rapid logistical support. If things spiraled further, the message, while Washington would prefer de-escalation, it was prepared to act. The spectacle of U.S. carrier strike groups slicing through the waves of the Mediterranean was intended as a deterrent. But deterrence, especially in the Middle East, is never a simple calculation. Iranian officials accused the U.S. of preparing for a direct assault on its territory, promising retaliation not only against Israel, but against any American assets within reach. From oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz to U.S. bases in the Gulf, all the while, global alarm grew over the prospect hand. Consequences of the Iranian nuclear program reaching full maturity. For years, Israel has voiced concerns that a nuclear-armed Iran could fundamentally alter the security calculus of the entire region. International nuclear watchdogs warned that we're fighting to break out in earnest and threaten Tehran's core leadership. The temptation to accelerate a weapons program, or even threaten to use a nuclear device, could become irresistible. And what would happen if such threats became reality? Even a single use of nuclear weaponry, analysts agree, would not remain a purely regional disaster. Iranian and Israeli cities are densely populated. Radioactive fallout would not respect borders, and millions of lives would hang in the balance. Major oil terminals lie just miles from likely flashpoints. Economic consequences would ripple outwards, potentially triggering global recession and energy crises. But perhaps the most dangerous aspect is not any one airstrike or warship deployment, but the logic of escalation itself. At each stage, both sides fear showing weakness. Both have domestic populations watching and waiting for decisive action. Yet, as history so often demonstrates, The line between deterrence and disaster is thin and perilously easy to cross. So is nuclear war incoming? For now, cooler heads on both sides hope to avoid the worst outcome. Diplomats shuttle between capitals, back channels buzz. And military planners calibrate their actions for maximum signal, minimum fatal miscalculation. The U.S. presence, for now, is a sword in its sheath, meant to hold back the tide. But the region remains a powder keg. One misread signal, one rogue missile, or one act of desperation could ignite a chain reaction that reverberates far beyond Israel, or Iran threatening the fragile peace of an interconnected world. Now, the world watches. Because in the contest between war and peace, history has shown us how quickly and unexpectedly the balance can tip.